For thousands of years, humans have passed on knowledge through the process of storytelling. Right back into the dawn of time, there would be families that would sit around campfires and they would bequeath knowledge. Father would teach son, mother would teach daughter. This is how knowledge was passed on. Then, with the advent of the written word, we became able all of a sudden to take knowledge and transfer it to a physical, recordable media. First time in history, beyond this concept of songs and stories and legends. Now what's happened is originally we had libraries and resources of knowledge where everyone could come and bring their information in and just contribute it to the greater mass of the good so that the whole society and structure could function in a better form. Now the problem with this is, of course, is that the core politicals became involved. And when the core politicals became involved, well, they have this concept of ownership. And this strange plague of ownership that infects the entire core political and capitalistic mindset has affected also knowledge. So that for the first time in history, we have the idea of knowledge being owned, not being free. A bizarre concept, to be sure, and something that our grandfathers, great-grandfathers, and great-great-great-grandfathers would find to be absolutely an abomination by anyone's ethnical or cultural standards. It's absolutely ridiculous. So now, what has happened? In 2005, we've passed the 50% mark. It's the halfway point in 2005. Over half of the Earth's population now lives in these concrete hive structures we call cities. This is how they exist. They exist constantly with the buying and selling of goods. Everything is market. We are creating our own desert wasteland of concrete and steel, in which totally separates us from the individuality of our being. But there is hope, and that hope comes in the form of the internet. The whole purpose of the show Patrolling, the whole idea, is to take tricks and manipulations and ideas and concepts that have been shown to me by people more experienced. Learn from experience, but it doesn't have to be your experience. I've got a lot of different experience doing a lot of different things. Some people would call me a jack of all trades. Some people would say I can't hold a steady job. But be that as it may, you get a lot of neat tricks coming down the pipe. And the only way we can ever try to keep everyone to a stage where we have some sort of common ground with another person on the subway or in the elevator is we have to have common things that we all share. How many times have you seen folks with movies? They'll say, did you like Star Wars? What about Chewbacca, Luke Skywalker? You talk about Star Trek. These are all things that all of us have in common. But when you have ownership of an idea and a concept, this concept must be sold. It must be bought. And those of us without the money or the economic means or perhaps the equipment to watch, to view, to consume these ideas and concepts and take them part of our own mental structure, well, you just don't get it. And suddenly they're on the outside and they're no longer part of our society. And we start winding up with these huge swaths of people who just can't be employed, are not connected in some way. And this is who those people, where the people wind up. Where do they go? What's left for them? Nothing. So they just wander around totally disconnected from the world. Patrolling is a concept about adapting to your environment. You have to take the knowledge that you want, use what you can, and leave what you don't. Like a smorgasbord. It's free for everyone. Everyone can use the knowledge that I'm talking about here. There's a lot of stuff that comes from soldiers. A lot of stuff that comes from the military. And the reason why I teach that is because it's functional and it works. There's nothing quite like being able to look after yourself and being able to look after yourself, teach others to look after themselves. I encourage that all of these programs and these shows be given away freely and distributed freely because as of 2005, we've moved to the concrete megastructure. We've moved to the hive mentality. We can no longer exist as in simple symbiosis with nature because too many of us have decided to go the other way. You got to learn from experience, but it doesn't have to be your experience. Learn from my experiences. Learn from other experiences in the community. Because if you don't, well, the story is you have to adapt or die. What does it do? How well does it do it? This application we apply to everything. So when we look at our clothing, naturally we go with the tactical clothing when you're in the more rural and suburban environments. However, the problem with that is that there is the WOGs and the sane. Now the sane people do not adhere to what does it do and how well does it do it. This will cause you problems. It is unfortunate that we live in the kind of society, the kind of world, in the kind of cities where people make snap judgments based upon the kind of footwear you wear, the brand name of pants that you have, the kind of jacket that you have. And if suddenly you don't fit into the norm, or God forbid, you fit into a norm of some subculture, you'll be instantly judged, summary tried, all before you open your mouth, just based upon what you wear. This is an unfortunate fact. There's nothing we can do about this. Now, there are certain advantages to wearing camouflage clothing in the city. For example, if it'll survive in the bush, you know it'll survive in the urban environment. The chances of your combat pants becoming ripped, the chances of your boots becoming damaged, the chances of your jacket becoming horribly frayed are next to impossible here. The amount of wear and tear you put on tactical gear in the city is minimal, so it'll last you forever. However, within the city you must be employed, you must have social contact with people, and in the current political and social climate, you find that wearing more and more tactical clothing starts people getting a little bit more afraid of you, and this can work to your disadvantage. You must remember the purpose of camouflage. The purpose of camouflage is so that you are not seen. The best way not to be hit, not to be targeted, is to not be seen. It is vital that we realize that part of being who you are is being strong in yourself. A lot of people wear combat clothing, a lot of WOGs to draw a lot of strength from dressing to set themselves apart from society, and that's a good thing. That is a good thing. It's individualism. But if it's individualism expressed that costs you, that's something you want to be aware of. Just because you don't happen to wear your camouflage pants one day, that doesn't mean you're not a WOG. You have to stop thinking like you're some teenager, and you have to start thinking like an operative. You have to think to yourself, how will this affect me? How will people's notions of me change as I walk around in an urban sprawl, dressed inside my woodland camouflage? Yes, the material is good, and yes, I will definitely be able to survive. You wish to be gray. You want to blend into the background. You don't want to stand out and have people go, oh look, there's a WOG. The whole point of not being hit is not being seen. The easiest way not to get hit or to get targeted is to not be seen. This is obvious. This is a simplistic fact that anyone in the world could tell you. Yet we seem to forget that when we're in the city. When you're in the city, there's a lot of influences, a lot of things drawn in on it. We feel the need to express ourselves as individuals. But you mustn't give anything away. You have no reason to tell people personal facts about you. They don't need to know that you're a WOG. They don't need to know what your personal shopping habits are. All of these things are gathered by people, and they can be used against you as a judgment. So when you dress like this in the city, you have to ask yourself, is dressing and acting like a tactical WOG a help or a hindrance? There's certain things that transcend the scenario in which it's part of. For example, if you're lost in the wilderness and you find that you come to the realization, oh my gosh, I'm lost. Well, the first thing that has to happen is you have to realize that you're lost and you have problems, you don't know where you are, you have no idea where you're going to be going, you have no idea how to get there. So in order to figure that out, what you do is you have to stop. First thing you got to do is you got to stop. And in the first season, we talked a lot about that. We talked about pulling back, assessing all the equipment that you need to have, and so on and so forth. But how do you keep track of where you are as a person in life? Just as when you're lost, you have to keep track of all your possessions and everything you have, yada yada, so you can see how you can figure a way out of being lost. That same sort of metaphor can apply to life. And I found that one of the greatest ways to figure out where you're going and the direction that you want to go is to externalize your own perspective on your life. That's what I would recommend. And there's no greater tool to do this that I've found over the years than role-playing games. Anybody who's ever played role-playing games, chances are people watching this have never been exposed to real role-playing games. They always have the computer role-playing games. And don't get me wrong, I think there's nothing wrong with computer role-playing games. I think they're excellent. I think they're a lot of fun. But they're definitely not book role-playing games. Because the book role-playing games are, well, they're better. They enable the mind. They have a community. It's a great thing to do to get together with people. Now, whenever you talk about role-playing games, of course, there's so many different systems, and you think the Linux Microsoft thing is bad. Bah, that's nothing. You got to see what happens when you got like 25 different gamers who are all in love with different systems. You know, it really gets bad. So what I recommend to everyone, whether you're a gamer or not, is to actually make yourself a character sheet. Now, this is something that gets taught in roundabout ways by writing creative workshops and executive groups. So make a list of your strengths and weaknesses, whatever. What they're actually saying is make yourself a character sheet. Because realistically, that's what a resume is. That's what you do to try to sell yourself to a company, is you make this resume. And what is a resume but a character sheet, really? But what if you were to take a character sheet and make one that you could see where your own strengths and weaknesses are, and therefore you could plan ways to make yourself better or worse? So I'm just going to give you kind of my roundabout version of a character sheet. Now, if you are a gamer, or you want to get involved with role-playing games, you're like, what is this role-playing game thing about? You do some research online, check it out, see all the different systems out there. By all means, go with a system that you enjoy. I have my preferences, but that's regardless. Okay, so what I've done is I've kind of mixed and matched a bunch of different systems together, and I'm just going to give you sort of a generalized format. So after watching this, you'll be able to kind of make a sheet for yourself and figure out where's your direction? What direction do you want to go? So on your sheet, you want to have the following physical characteristics. This has to do with your physical body and what have you. So you've got your strength, usually measured on a scale between 1 to 10. Some people like to do it on a scale between 1 to 20. And with role-playing games, it's generated by dice and that. But for you, I generally think of myself on a scale from 1 to 20. And you do like some sort of mathematical thing. Well, if 1, you could lift 20 pounds. So it's quite easy. 10 is as strong as you could humanly possibly be. 1 would be like, crippled or what have you. So you pick yourself out a space somewhere along there. I like using 1 to 20 because it's not quite so finite. Average on 1 to 20 is 10. So I'm going to say my strength is about well, I work out and I run a little bit, so I'm going to put my strength at about 12. Now, there'll be those that sit there and say, well, Sean, you're, and of course I'm running sideways too, so it looks like hell. And then underneath strength, we've got intelligence, strength, intelligence. Intelligence, that's not necessarily your wisdom, that's a different stat. The difference between intelligence and wisdom, intelligence is how well you can think, wisdom is how well you can apply the experiences you've had in life. And those are a little bit heady, but there is quite a difference. There's lots of intelligent people out there who just do really dumb things repeatedly. Now, I would put my intelligence probably around, on a scale from 1 to 20. I'm going to be a little bit generous with myself here, and I'm going to give myself, say, a 13 intelligence on a scale of 1 to 20. Okay? Your wisdom, I've done a lot of stuff. I have done a lot of stuff. So I'm going to get a little bit buffy with my wisdom here, and I'm going to make my wisdom 15. Whoa! I'm sure there's gamers out there like, hey man, Rastlin only had a 14 wisdom. Okay, well, whatever. I'm going to give myself a 15 wisdom. If you can change this later, what have you. You have your dexterity. Your dexterity is how flexible you are. A 20 would be like a ninja or Bruce Lee. 1 would be Smokehouse. So what I would do instead of trying to classify yourself that way, I'd look around, probably put it in around the I stretch fairly often. I'll put it up there with my strength, which would be 12 again. Now, and again, if this is a role-playing game, all this would be randomly generated. But this is me. This is me that we're creating a character sheet for. So you have a lot more, leeway of what you think of yourself. You can go all egotistical, say, yeah, I'm the smartest guy ever, but you're not going to have an accurate character sheet then. You have to be honest with yourself. No one has to see this but you. Then you have your constitution. How tough are you in reference of getting sick? That kind of thing. Do you get sick often? Your bones prone to breaking? Have you had a lot of injuries growing up? That's got nothing to do with your fighting spirit. It just means how much punishment your body can take. My body can take a lot of punishment. So I'm going to give myself a 15 constitution as well. Then you've got your charisma, your ability to speak to people, be influenced, make friends easily, that kind of thing. And that is something that I can do. So I'm going to go absolutely crazy, give myself a 16 charisma. And your comeliness, which of course is your physical appearance only, how well you can dress up or look all haughty or whatever. Okay, that's sort of the general idea. Charisma offshoots your comeliness because there's lots of really ugly people who've got a lot of charisma. I give you Mick Jagger. I mean, his comeliness is like 0. But, he's got thousands and thousands of adoring fans. Why is that? Well, because he's got very high charisma. So for me, my comeliness, I'm going to plant that at about a good solid 7. So, we've got, underneath, once you get your physical attributes down, now in role-playing games, you use these attributes and they generate everything else. But since we're not part of any particular gaming system, this is just a general outline to give you sort of an idea where you're at. Then you've got your name, which of course is going to be Sean for me here. I'll just write that in, Sean. Okay. My code name will be SKTFM. And then my age, I'm 31. Ouch. That's really old. Then we have your health. Now, health points and all that kind of jazz, this is usually where you get the idea of hit points and how much damage you can take in a game before you die. So like, in Call of Cthulhu, for example, a game that's won all kinds of awards, if you get shot, you generally get killed right away. And I would recommend games that make guns lethal because it gives you a lot more accuracy in your role-playing scenarios that you may or may not endure. So You have your health, which has to do with how much poison you can take into your body, that kind of a thing. And depending on the system, I'm just going to say I've got 20 health points. Your SDC, which comes from palladium, which means structural damage capacity. I give palladium full credits for this. This was a concept they had that certain items increase your toughness. For example, if you get shot and you're wearing body armor, well, the armor absorbs the impact, right? Or if you've got subdermal armor due to cybernetic implants, that kind of a thing, the armor takes the damage. You yourself do not. You yourself will not be slowed down because your armor was damaged. So I'm going to have 0 STC because right now I'm wearing a Kung Fu outfit. There's no leather armor. There's nothing like that. And of course your hit points. This is how much of a beating you can take. Now hit points are kind of a funny thing because once you're, like any gamer would know, once your hit points are 0, you're dead. So it depends on how much damage things are cooking out. So we're going to go with, you look at how you run your damage charts, but generally one gunshot should incapacitate anyone. That's your gaming criteria for systems, is that one gunshot should incapacitate anyone. So I'm going to give myself, as hit points, I'm going to give myself 10 hit points. Now your average knife strike, usually like a knife stab wound, does 6 hit points damage. So by my scale, that means that I could be stabbed twice and be dead. Even though we've heard in the news that, you know, you can get stabbed like 150 times and still not be dead. Moving along, we have your skills and weapon proficiencies. These two categories here, hopefully this one, will be the longest part of making your character sheet up. This is where you write down things you have working knowledge of. If you have working knowledge of, say, first aid, and you think of yourself, if I came across a scene and there was a guy lying on the ground, how proficient would I be at first aid as a percentage point? If I had 100% first aid, would that make me like a paramedic, or does that just mean that the paramedic's a different skill? So you isolate your skills. You have computer programming, you have HTML design, you have maybe lock picking as a skill. You can go through all the different gaming books and you can come up with all the different kinds of skills. That's why role-playing books are handy to have around. You sit around and go, I don't know anything. Well, do you know anything about botany, plant life? Well, yeah, I used to help my mom garden and stuff like that. Well, great. That means you've got some skills in botany. Do you have some skills in cryptography? Do you have skills with tactical movement? Do you have skills with plotting, tactical thinking? This skill sheet should go down. Each one you put a percentage point on. If you got a little bit of knowledge in it, you got 10% or 5% in this knowledge. But if you're lead hacksaw and you know what's going on, crank that sucker up. Never give yourself 100% in anything because that means you're infallible and you can never be beaten. Usually in the role-playing games, they play them with different dice. 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 20-sided dice. So what happens is with a percentage, you would run up a scenario, you'd put all your dice together and roll, and then that will it'll generate a number, and that number based against your skill point numbers plus the modifier provided by your general gaming master, and you determine whether or not you make the roll. The whole world of role-playing is essentially a glorified game of what if. And back in the 80s, all the crazy Christian institutions swore that before, like now you only hear about the video games being evil. Well, before there was the video games, there was these guys. There was the role-playing games, and there was many a book burned, and many kids wound up getting very heavily persecuted, yours truly amongst them, simply because we wanted to use our minds to escape reality, because we wanted to enjoy these worlds created. Now these games here, SLA Industries, Cyberpunk, Shadowrun, Dark Conspiracy, these are all games with a very much a cyberpunk feel to it. GURPS makes a cyberpunk book as well. And there's a few other ones. There's some ones that I have a copy of, one called Cult, which is very, very rare. Some of the games were made illegal because they had dangerous materials, enabled people to make characters that nobody should make. There's a very weird portion of history, and now it's largely forgotten because everything's gone into video games. But before the video games, I'd urge everyone to get together, make yourself up a character sheet so you can look at yourself objectively. See if your strength is low and you want to up it by working out, by doing cardio, by getting some skills in running. Weapon proficiencies. What kind of weapons do you know how to use? Do you know how to use a knife? Do you know how to use a gun? Do you know how to use a bow staff, nunchucks? What do you know how to use? You don't put you can put a percentage beside it if you like, or you can just note that you have it there. And going through there, you're able to look at yourself as a character in a story or in a book or even in your own life. And then from that, you can choose a character class, something you want to do, something you want to spend your life doing. Spend some thought on this. This is you. This is one of the few occasions you get to stand back and go, you know, what do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to present myself to other people to be? Because nobody gives anybody any thought about that. Nobody gives themselves the thought to be, what kind of person do I want to be, not the kind of person they tell you to be. My name is Sean Kennedy, and I am the fucking man. let's cut the crap. We can all sit around and pretend like we don't want to have a job, and we all can, you know, sit around, pretend and cry about how shitty it is the core political has taken over the world. And we know it. I know it's very shitty that the core political has taken over. But we have to deal with this. You have three choices. You can either fight the core political, you can sell out to the core political, or you can wallow in your own crap. If you wallow in your own crap, that's useless. You're not doing anything for anyone. You just sit around, smoke weed, and just go, oh, well, you know, what are we going to do? I'm going to work my crappy job, hate my crappy job, and there's nothing I can do to change anything. So instead, I'm just going to subscribe to my magazines and listen to my music, and that'll be the end of me. And that's okay, because then you become part of a market as well. That's not what I'm about, and that's not what WOGs are about either. You see, the point here is we have to change things. We have to change things in the world. We have to change the core political state. And how are we going to do that? The only way we can do that is to infiltrate them, to corrupt the corruptors. This is the idea. This is the whole concept. People go, you're selling out if you put on a tie. No, dude, no, you're not selling out if you put on a tie. You sell out if you put on a tie for the wrong reasons. You sell out if you put on a tie to buy into the lie. That's the problem, is if you begin to buy into the whole crap. You say, well, I got a nice car now, you know, and I got my wife and everything's nice. No. Now is the time that you have to stand up and fight. If you want to get yourself a good job, there's no crime in that. There's no crime in wanting a good job. What's wrong with wanting a job that you can be proud of? What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. But that doesn't mean you have to sell out all your ideology. These people who have corporations that stand up and say, oh yeah, we believe in this doctrine and this dogma. When you go to the office, you bet it's just like going deep undercover. They've sent all sorts of operatives into our world looking for what's cool, little psychological tweaks they can do to make sure that they market to us. They can sell us the lie, to declare war on the mind share of North America. It's a nightmare what they've done. So that's fine. We can either hate them for that, which is, we're going to do that. So we can either hate them or love them. I have chosen to hate them because I cannot forgive them for what they have done. How they've destroyed countless lives, how they've destroyed art, how they've destroyed our way of life, and the way of life of people who are peace-loving, concerned, gentle consumers. That is a terrifying thing to me. So how do we get back? How are we going to do that? Well, my fellow WOGs, I think the way we should get back at them is use the same tactics against them that they use against us. Let's infiltrate their companies. Let's infiltrate their places of work. Let's get on their little boards of directors. Let's get on the inside so we can take corporate information. I'm talking about espionage-style stuff here and outing it. I'm not talking about overthrowing governments. Governments are fine. Let's overthrow the powers that run the governments. Let's overthrow the corporations. Let's get their personal and private data out on the wires. Let's broadcast that. Let's see how much we can actually screw up things if we actually learn the truth, if we get enough operatives inside their companies. What if we were to do that? Nobody's tried it. I think the WOGs could do it. I think you could do it. I can do it. My name's Sean Kennedy, and I am the fucking man.